Do you need help lining up press plates? Well, stick around because I've got a secret to share with you. This is the beautiful Flowering Hedge press plate set, and it's a little bit different because it's actually a layering press plate set. Now don't run away because it's not as daunting as it sounds, because it comes with a special secret. It's an alignment guide, which is basically a piece of acetate that has outlines drawn on it to give you the tools you need to get perfect placement. And today I'm going to make 2 beautiful cards with you, and I'm going to share with you 2 different ways to use this guide to get perfect placement. So it's all color coded, and the green outline is the size of an A2 card front. And the first way we're going to be using it is to align everything independently, and I'll tell you why shortly. So I've got the green line lined up with the A2 size on the chase, and I'm going to be using some low-tack tape and attaching it to the actual base of the chase. I'm also going to use some low-tack tape to hold the cardstock in place on the platen, and I'm lining that up with the A2 marks on the clear plate. There are 3 different layers to this flowering hedge, and they're all stamped twice to give a frame. I'm starting with the stem layer, and each of these outlines on the acetate is color coded, and this one is in blue. So I'm lining that up through the acetate and onto the plate. I'm adding my ink just as you normally would when you're using a better press, and then I can just run it through the machine like I normally would. One thing to be aware is that because I'm doing multiple stamping with the press plate, I don't want to contaminate other portions of my card, and I found it was just easier to wipe away any excess ink before I ran it through my die cutting machine. If you don't have a problem with extra ink transferring, then you might be able to skip this step. I just didn't want to take the chance of having to start it all over again. And next, I want to re-stamp the same plate, and I want to stamp it independently again. So I'm lifting it up and realigning it with the opposite side of the guide. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to get perfect placement so I can use the coordinating die to cut this out and make it into a frame. And to be honest, aligning it each time didn't take very long at all, but I was very careful not to have any excess ink sort of hanging around. So the next layer that I'm going to stamp is the flowers themselves, and the outline for these is in black. One thing I do want to mention here is that because the plates are going through that acetate and onto the magnetic chase, is that I did find sometimes they shifted just a little bit when I was adding the ink, because I'm an over inker, so that's just something that I have to live with. But because they were lined up with the guide, it was easy for me to see if they did shift, and I could just shift them back so that they were in the right spot before I ran it through the die cutting machine. And the best thing about this kind of system, about having a layering press plate system, is that we can now do multiple ink colors when we're stamping out an image like this. The only other way that I've been able to do multiple colors on a press plate is to mix the colors on the plate itself, but that's more of a ombre or a rainbow effect that you're going to get, whereas here I can pretty much get this lined up perfectly and have exactly the colors I want for the leaves, for the stems, and for the flowers. And because it has the coordinating die, I could just come in and die cut that out. And I've got a special plan for this panel. So the second technique that I want to share with you today is the hinge method. And I've lined up the green line again on the A2 outline, and I've only added the low tack tape to the bottom portion of the acetate. So this makes it really easy for me to come in and line up the press plates looking through the acetate. There's less likelihood for the plates to shift when I'm adding the ink, but I'm still wiping away any excess ink that might have got onto the chase before I run it through the die cutting machine. But how I'm really changing it up this time, and to save time and make it a little bit quicker, is that I'm not lining up the plates a second time. This time I'm going to flip the platen or the top clear plate instead. So I've done exactly the same technique. I did check with the acetate to make sure that the image hadn't shifted. I'll lift the acetate back on the hinge before I run it through the die cutting machine. But I flipped the plate this time. So now I've got the two images stamped exactly where they need to be. I'm going to do the same thing with the flower image. I'm lining that up with the black outline. And I have chosen some different colors this time just to make it a little bit different, because we know that I don't like to do exactly the same card over and over. I am making sure that none of the ink got onto the chase before I run it through the machine. And I'm ensuring that the press plate hasn't shifted using the alignment guide again. So I check which side of the cardstock I need to put the impression on, and then I can just run that through the machine again. The last layer, or the leaves, the color for the outline for those is red. So if you're not sure what color is for what or how to line them up, there is a layering guide that you can download, and it's available at the Altenew store where you find this press plate set. Overall, I got a good impression with the inks, but a couple of the flowers just needed a little bit more color, so I found a matching pencil and just colored those in separately. I also wanted to use these plates for the sentiments because these fonts just make my heart happy. They're so pretty. So I used some pigment ink this time. I thought the black ink is really going to stand out on top of these busy floral backgrounds. And they also have coordinating dies, so that was nice because it meant I didn't have to fussy cut them. So even though I found that this was a much quicker way to stamp out the image, it didn't line up perfectly with the coordinating die. So if you are wanting to use the die, I would recommend doing the independent stamping for each side of the image. And I've got a great tip for you here. If you want perfect stamping with your press plates, you can always create your own alignment guide. Grab a piece of acetate and a Sharpie marker and draw an outline around the press plates that you want to stamp in a specific spot. And then you can just run it through your die cutting machine and you know it's going to be exactly where you want it to be on your card panel. I did keep this card very clean and simple. Just added my panel to the front of a side fold card and popped up the sentiment. And I was pretty excited that this die set cut the frame out of the center of the flowering hedge. And of course I had to make it into an interactive shaker card. So I'm adding some acetate and using some of the thicker foam tape from Altenew, because normally I'd have to double up the foam tape to get it thick enough for a shaker with sequins, but having foam tape that's thicker and ready to go is just so much quicker. And I love this thinner version too. It works really well for shakers and creating a well. I'm adding a variety of sequins into the well. This just makes it easier than trying to add them onto the card front and then stick the panel over top. This way I can remove all the release paper and add the backing before I adhere it to the front of my card. This is just some scrap cardstock here. I made it a little bit hard for myself. You could cut it perfectly to size before, which would have been easier, but I just snipped away the excess once I'd adhered it to the card panel, and then used some liquid glue and attached it to the front of a card base. Did you know that press plates can be used in a hot foil machine? And they work really well. These plates would look amazing, I think, in some gold foil, especially the leaves. You could still have the stems and the flowers in colours, and then do gold leaves or do gold flowers. It would all look beautiful. Even the sentiments would look great in a foil as well. So all together now, this is the first technique where we aligned it independently to get the perfect placement to coordinate with the die cut, and made it into a shaker. And then the second technique, which is a little bit quicker, where we just flipped the die and created a panel for the front of the card. And of course, those beautiful sentiments. Let me know in the comments below if you have a favourite card, or if you're going to try and create your own alignment guide with some acetate. I've got 2 more videos here using press plates for you to enjoy. I look forward to seeing you there. If you liked today's video, please click on the thumbs up button, and if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? It's totally free. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.